Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeice. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeice, and we're here in the studio with Darby McLean, COO of GenPrime. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Darby, I'm so excited to have you here. When someone reads about what you do, I think at first blush, they might think, what is that? But you're a co-author, you have contributed to patents, you've obviously been in development, marketing, etc. with GenPrime. Give us some 10,000-foot view scope of what GenPrime is and how this has come to be, because it's an impressive organization.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I really enjoy talking about it, so I'd be happy to share the story. So GenPrime's a biotechnology company, and that just by itself can be kind of confusing. But I can break it down. There's different types of biotech. And basically what we do is detection of microorganisms, and analysis of things like clinical diagnostic tests in order to make the world a safer and healthier place.
Why don't you give us a couple examples of what's a clinical diagnostic test?
You bet. So if you go into the physician's office and they're testing you for the flu and they swab into your throat and drip, drop onto a test, that's a clinical diagnostic test. And so what we do is have technology that can make those types of tests electronic. We can image them, and then using image analysis technology, make that a part of your electronic medical record, just like they do in other things like X-ray.
Right.
And we also have point detection technology. So if I have a sample and I'm not sure what's in it, or I'm concerned that there might be something dangerous, we can take samples and very quickly, 10 seconds later, tell you whether or not those substances are harmful.
Well, and obviously you're creating some massively efficient processes for problems and challenges that have been around forever, but you're creating those efficiencies. How did GenPrime come to be? And it is here in Spokane, Washington, so obviously we're proud of that fact, and many of the innovative businesses here in our area. But how did GenPrime get its foundation?
Absolutely. So it's a fun story. GenPrime actually spun out of Eastern Washington University. So it was started by two professors, a graduate student and a local entrepreneur, who at the time were interested in getting into the business world and taking some of that high-tech solutioning that they were doing at the university level and commercializing it. And at the time, there was an entity in Spokane, I'm going to date myself now, called CERTI, which stood for the Spokane
Unfortunately, I know the date because I'm in that same wheelhouse. So.
That stood for the Spokane Intercollegiate Research and Technology Institute. And essentially the role of CERTI at the time was to try to incubate and stimulate high-tech companies to commercialize in Spokane. And so we incubated with CERTI and received a little bit of grant money, and the rest is kind of history. We started developing some technology and grew the company from there.
So they were pretty integral to the process. CERTI was. And
absolutely.
Is that much like a startup Spokane now, and maybe that same interaction?
Yeah, it's really it's similar, I think, in its intent. So these economic development entities try to stimulate economic growth, create high-paying jobs by providing resources to high-tech companies. So that was helpful for us insofar as that we were given space, access to high-tech lab space that I don't think we otherwise would have had access to.
Okay, so the opportunity might not have been there.
Absolutely.
Which does bring up a question, whether you're talking to GSI or other organizations that are obviously promoting business here in our region. At any time were there decisions that as the trajectory of this successful business took off, that you needed to move out of Spokane but rather decided to stay in Spokane?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there was really never a consideration to get out of Spokane because the founders and the employees of the company love Spokane.
That's good
news. So, I mean,
news.
really part of the existence of the company is the idea that we needed to create jobs for ourselves. You know, we were people that had chemistry, biology, immunochemistry backgrounds and nowhere to work. And so rather than to leave the area where, unfortunately, we see some of that attrition happening from our university system, which is so strong here in Spokane, this group of people decided to stay and invest in the area and create jobs and be in Spokane.
That's encouraging, Darby, though, because no matter what university you're talking to or graduate program, et cetera, part of the discussion is, the question to the community is, are we as an institution creating the necessary employees in the workforce with the right skills for these respective jobs. Obviously, with Gen Prime, I think you're saying Eastern Washington, Gonzaga, Washington State, and many others, but you feel like the skill set is coming out of these organizations.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and then some. So I think, in fact, if there's any issue, we need to try to prevent attrition or a brain drain where we have these really highly skilled, highly educated workforce here in Spokane. And what we are challenged to do as a community is create opportunities for them.
To keep them.
Because I think they'll stay. I really do. I think that these graduating talent pool coming out of this university, they'd love to be here in Spokane if we can create the opportunities. So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and I think you're having a lot of success with that. So back in those early days, partnering, if you will, or CERTI assisting in granting you necessary space and opportunity. From there, I'm always really curious about the origins of a business. Of how did it get from A to B and then some. So talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges and the accomplishments early on in that pattern.
Absolutely. So, there's been so many, and Gen Prime's it's an interesting story because the company's 20 years old, so there have been some pivots along the way.
Sure.
We had, very initially technical challenges that had to be overcome. We needed technologies that worked and that were helpful to the customer base. We had funding challenges, but found that there was great support in the Spokane community and people who were willing to step up and give us the opportunity to grow the company and to cause it to be successful.
Did you primarily, was it venture capital, private money, traditional, to the extent that you can speak to it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a little of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I would say mostly private, committed angel type investment. Yeah, not a lot of institutional investment, just a really supportive Spokane community.
Right.
And for mentoring too. I would say one of the really greatest things about Spokane and our experience here is that we've had access to some really fantastic mentors. Our company's a great example of where we had bench scientists, myself and many of the other kind of longer term employees are scientists. And so you have these high-tech founders who don't have a lot of business background and who've needed to be mentored and to gain some experience and some expertise.
Well, I think that is a description I didn't mention is the fact that you're a scientist.
Yes.
Your business background, scientist, inventor, patents. Speak to us. You hear a lot, especially in the legal community, IP, intellectual property, patents, and the value of patents. You hear Microsoft talking about the truly mind-boggling thousands of patents that Microsoft owns. Talk to us about the patent process as it relates to Gen Prime and how you've gone about that or even the need for it.
Absolutely. So that's a great example of a place where we've really depended on mentors and expertise from the Spokane community where our patent strategy is actually pretty varied. We have quite a few patents. I'd say at least a dozen, maybe just under 20 issued patents both in the United States and then obviously globally.
That's impressive.
But we don't patent every idea. And there's a lot of consideration that needs to take place about whether or not to patent something because you really are then publishing and making public the technology specifically. So we get a lot of good advice. And when we come up with new innovations, we again depend on mentoring and expertise from the legal community.
That's a good point, though, in terms of something that's basically proprietary and you don't necessarily want to expose that information.
Yeah.
Versus, it sounds like there are plenty of ideas or technologies that either ethically or from a business standpoint are better to have out in almost a shared community.
Absolutely, and it's not always black and white, so that's why it's important to go get advice and to have mentors and experts. Again, you can't be the expert on everything.
Right.
I really like to try, but
yeah, but I think that's actually a good point. I think in any business, if you're a motivated individual, you do want to try to bite off sometimes more than you can, or, hey, I can do this or I can do that. But what's the kind of the cliche of the 80-20 rule? You need to figure out what aspects of the business and or endeavor that is your wheelhouse, and then look for experts to fill in the blanks.
When to focus, when to delegate. That's always a fine line. But
I think that's a continuous challenge for any business as it pivots, as you said. So in those early days, you had the founder. How many folks were involved in the first 3 years?
Yeah, so really close to 5. There were 4 main founders, not all of whom were operationally involved. So, they were there for mentoring and for help, and, they had different areas of expertise. And then as the company sort of grew, it grew a little bit with people too. So then and it was a fun opportunity for recent graduates, which included myself back then.
Yeah.
To come on
So
board.
nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was founded in 1997. And I'd say really got going in earnest by the next year.
Okay. Wow. How many folks are involved in the organization now?
We have fewer than 15 employees.
Okay.
And we've been able to be small because we develop intellectual property, and then our model is to license it. So Gen Prime
that's
hasn't,
interesting.
Yeah, we haven't necessarily needed to grow as far as being a sales and marketing organization. And we're the coolest company you've never heard of, because a lot of our products are sold via OEM or
Right.
where it's branded for a partner.
No, I actually, and I'm glad you're explaining that, because I think the licensing concept, first of all, is extremely interesting if you're interested in business. But the concept that you can create either a product or service and then put it out to maybe an entity that has more resources in the sales and or distribution.
Absolutely.
The film industry is even that way too. I mean, you hear
And
about
the food industry. Yep.
more industries than people know. You'll hear so-and-so produced a particular movie, or it was the director.
Yep.
But it was Warner Brothers that distribute it, because they have the
Absolutely.
channels to distribute it. So talk to us a little bit about that, again, to the extent that you can in terms of confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements. But how have you found your national or international partners to vet who you do want to distribute what you're doing?
Exactly. So that's where a lot of our sales and marketing effort is that niche, initial, we call it missionary selling, where we're out there really convincing a business to business, a partner company. So our products I can describe for you, we have one, for example, that does fuel ethanol monitoring. And we have a big Midwest chemical company, Ecolab, that sells that.
Yep,
So Ecolab
definitely
people
heard of
probably
that.
heard of. Gen Prime, they haven't.
Yeah, but you're backing it, or you're in the behind the scenes, behind the curtain.
Exactly. We have biowarfare detectors that are sold to the Air National Guard and to the United States Postal Service, and those are sold through a distributor that sells that type of equipment.
Can you give us a little more on what that is? That sounds interesting.
You bet. It's a point detection device. It works using fluorescence. So if you can picture like a glow stick on Halloween, it's not
Absolutely.
really glowing, and then it connects with something happens and you can really see it. So we do that like all the way down to the molecular level. You could never see it with your eyes, but we have little readers that can see when something like that's happening, and then it can give a signal that alerts you to the fact that there would be bacteria, for example, in a substance.
I think it's fascinating. I think I'm obviously fascinated with things I don't understand completely, and that's probably one of them. But a highly complex business and business model. Let's take a short little break with Darby McLean of Gen Prime and come right back and talk more about the operational aspects of Gen Prime.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
The economy is getting stronger. Banks are lending again, and interest rates are at historic lows. Now is a great time to buy your dream home. The caring and knowledgeable professionals at Homes for You have been helping people just like you for over 20 years. They take the time to listen to what you want and will help you find just the right home in Washington or Idaho. Real estate is what we do at Homes for You, 928-5782, or visit online at homes4uspokane.com.
Welcome to Business Talks. We're back with Darby McLean of Gen Prime, Chief Operating Officer.
That's right.
Let's talk some more about the various products that Gen Prime has. I feel like this is a segment, unfortunately, that I think we could talk for about 2 hours, because I think the complexity of what Gen Prime does is not only fascinating that someone would come up with it in the first place, but the complex challenges that you guys have provided solutions for is fascinating. And the fact that you participated in so many patents to resolve those issues?
Absolutely.
Tell us, like, for instance, biowarfare.
Yes.
That's something that you're involved in here locally. Tell us what that is and how you're resolving some of those issues locally.
Absolutely. So the interesting part of the way that we became involved with biowarfare was the original technology that founded the company. So I think I mentioned before the break that we use fluorescence detection, like the glow sticks on Halloween. It's a really fast way to measure bacteria, which would normally take 24 or 48 hours. We've developed technology that can detect bacteria in seconds, minutes and seconds. So we were originally going around and marketing that to food manufacturers, people that use bacteria to make a product like cheese,
right,
or
and
beer,
test it through.
my
favorite.
Okay. So my very first job out
Near
of
and dear to
college
your
was
heart.
to be a beer scientist, and so my parents were very proud of me.
And you got to drink a lot of varying types.
Yep. So we were drinking beer and eating cheese, and September 11th happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the anthrax subsequently shut down buildings and people were killed. And remarkably, though, we were able to identify that here's a really big problem that our community and society faces. And we have a technology, albeit in food science, that can meet this need. And with very little, about 9 months of kind of technical vetting, we were able to take that same conceptual technology and turn it into something that could detect biowarfare agents for our first responders.
But that's interesting how you took an analogous industry and looked at the parallels and examples.
Absolutely, which is what's so great about innovation. If it applies to one place, it probably applies to others.
Yeah.
And so it's just really a matter of tracking that down. So
locally then, how is that, again, is the concept that we talked about in the first section of the show, that you're creating this in the back office, so to speak, in the lab, patenting, et cetera. How does that end up getting kind of boots on the ground to be effective here in Spokane?
Absolutely. So we actually worked during development with our local Spokane Fire Department. And they have a hazmat team who really helped us with the human factors of testing. We had a product that worked really well in a food lab where you could drip, drip, drop, drop.
Right.
And those Spokane firefighters said, you guys, that will never work. We look at these big suits that we have to wear and these big face masks. And so they actually helped suit our scientists up into level A suits so that they could...
So there was a real collaboration between the boots on the ground, literally.
Absolutely.
And the lab.
Absolutely. So they helped us develop the technology in a robust, rugged way that could be used by firefighters. So that was our really first entry and interaction with that market. And then from there, we started working with other municipal hazmat teams and police agencies. And today, we have contracts with the Air National Guard, the Postal Inspection Service. There are probably products all over Spokane with the FBI, the Postal Service, and the Air Force Base.
Again, we've touched on it at different times during this. I'm kind of fascinated with how many products are out there in the whole portfolio, if you will, of what Gen Prime has created. But it isn't that someone necessarily would know about it. And I actually think that's fascinating because you've had such success, but because of your distribution channels, licensing agreements, it might be another face on it.
And we can kind of be under the radar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell me actually, with that concept, the challenges and the benefits of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the challenges are as we try to grow as an organization, sometimes you don't get the benefit of the brand equity of being Gen Prime. If people don't know about you to begin with, you don't necessarily get a lot of credit for the places that you've gone. On the other side of that, we have been able to stay small and local. And so, again, that's part of the, I think, ideology of the company is to really stay true to its high-tech, innovative focus. So that's... well, you need to see the doctor about that.
No
Maybe
kidding.
it'll be imaged on our on our diagnostic
Exactly.
product.
I'm afraid what might come up.
So we again, there's advantages to being under the radar. We get to kind of do our thing in Spokane and work with partners all over the world.
See that, I think that's the exciting part. And you mentioned the interesting piece because you're constantly seen in different trade magazines or books, et cetera. That branding concept. Oftentimes the person that is coming up with the concept is the one fronting the brand. You guys have had to kind of balance, if you will, the value of being behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And I think ultimately we've done an okay job of that.
Oh, it sounds like it.
As the company grows, that could change, but today that's the case, yeah.
Tell us how your position within Gen Prime since those early days has transitioned? Many different hats, as we've said
Absolutely.
at the outset here.
Yeah, so my background, I double majored in chemistry and biology. I was sure that I would be a cancer researcher
Right.
At the Fred Hutch or Carixa or something when this company got started. And I really kind of fell in love with product development research and the idea that something that you've worked really hard on is being used to help someone else. So I just geek on the idea that I could walk into the Spokane Fire Department and something that I invented is
being used.
Is being used in helping them. So that really hooked me. And then from there, my roles changed as the company's grown. So when you need somebody who's passionate about the technology to sell it to a partner, who better than the person who's got the most passion about
That's
it,
right.
which happened to be me, which kind of transitioned my roles from being on the bench to doing some technical selling,
Yep.
and then into eventually a leadership position for the company itself.
And I think you've done a good job of explaining that, actually, because not only you're correct from a sales presentation standpoint, your sincerity is either going to come across or it's not.
Absolutely.
But I think you've identified it is such a sincere place where that passion's coming from to walk in and solve an important solution, health care or otherwise, or safety at that fire department, that it's probably extremely effective, but also you having the technical background to put the pieces together, because
Absolutely.
you understand the science literally from the lab, because it probably is fairly unique that somebody out selling, so to speak, or partnering was also maybe in the white coat in the lab in the back, right?
Definitely.
Those are usually different people.
You're absolutely right, and it lends a credibility, and it creates an environment where people are more willing to be your partner because they see that you're passionate. And I think we've also always been eager learners. We're happy to learn from the customers and then to make adaptations or basically customer-driven innovations.
Well, your example, the fire department, was just that.
That's exactly right. So that the products can be more helpful to them. So I think that's kind of the genuine interaction.
What other products, kind of a two-part question, I guess, what other products would you want to note or talk about? And maybe this is probably more confidential, but what are areas you'd like to get into?
Absolutely.
Because you've covered a lot of ground in terms of exciting fields. I'm sure there's a pretty broad horizon out there you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. So remarkably, even despite the success, for example, with the bio warfare products, because we are probably one of a handful of companies globally that does point detection. And so that's been a big successful part of GenPrime, but really the biggest part of our company is in these imaging diagnostic testing or clinical diagnostic testing environments. And we've actually, in the United States, that's considered a Class 2 medical device. And so we've been through FDA clinical trials. It's what we've been working hard on the last several years. And we've finally now commercialized that product, and it's out there in physician office labs and hospitals. And what we're really interested in doing now is expanding the types of tests that can be run on that platform, because our vision genuinely is that you don't have these disconnected parts of healthcare where somebody's having to go off and look and make assessments that then aren't available electronically. So we're really focusing on expanding the access.
So once that platform, if you will, with the FDA approval, then you can build off of that. You don't necessarily need to recreate up to the platform.
Exactly. Yep. So the platform, and it's a software-based platform, which makes we can make it available in the cloud. For example.
I was just going to say exponentially, you can really expand with that.
So it's a very exciting growth opportunity for our company, and we're very, very committed to seeing that through, and have had, again, those initial successes through the FDA. We've got initial applications are actually in toxicology or drugs of abuse testing. Have had wonderful, great, again, community relationships, PAML here locally.
Yeah, I was going to say that. And with that area, talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the detection, if you will, slash the opioid issue, obviously, is something that's being talked about quite a bit right now. How has GenPrime played a part in the drug abuse field, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a test that is it's a drug cup, basically, that you donate into, and then it has embedded tests for 11 different drugs. 2 of them are opioids, actually, at different cutoffs, so they can be used in pain management or pain detection, or by hospital emergency rooms who need to see if a patient potentially has taken drugs before they can prescribe something. And the actual drug test cup itself isn't necessarily unique to GenPrime, but the ability to remove it in terms of an operator trying to make an assessment and making all of that electronic is what we've been doing.
So not only potentially in the healthcare and or prevention category, these products of course can assist. Also, I'm guessing the employment field and employment testing is where this comes up.
Absolutely.
Quite a bit.
So in fact, our big partner company, they're a company called eScreen, and that's exactly what they assist big employers with, is pre-employment drug screening. They do background checks, they do drug and alcohol analysis, and then all of that's immediately and electronically available for the employer and for medical review. So that's been a way that GenPrime's been able to place over 2,000 units in a year out into the U.S.
I was just going to
medical
say,
market.
I would say the volume and the need on a regular basis would be in the employment field.
Absolutely. So that's why it's such a big growing part of our company. And we're excited about the idea that the user bases are connected. So the same people that are doing drug tests and drug analysis might also be testing a patient for flu or for staph or for strep.
Right. Again, though, I like the fact that the overall policy or positioning of GenPrime has not only been in prevention, so it's solving solutions. It's
Absolutely.
Or solving problems, I should say, doing something good in our community.
That's really
right.
That's the
I know
hope,
that
yep.
sounds maybe a little cliche, but I would imagine, you said this earlier, there's got to be a lot of satisfaction of taking your education background and knowing you're doing something positive in the community.
That's
and
absolutely
when I say
right.
community, nationally and globally.
That's absolutely right. Yep. That's the sort of fundamental ideological
Right.
point of GenPrime, is to develop high technologies to make our world healthier.
And it can be done. I think for the sake of talking on this segment, we have the opportunity to talk to a lot of different businesses, and it's always encouraging and fascinating to see younger folks, older folk, people that have the passion to try to do something better or different. It might even be a traditional business, but
Yep.
done differently. Quite frankly, we all get enough news every day that's potentially on the negative side. It's exciting to talk to someone like yourself and realize, your early passions right out of college, and obviously taking the educational background you have, and look where you are now.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a really fun thing for me too. I enjoy very much the knowledge that the things that we're working on at GenPrime can benefit our community. But selfishly,
Yeah.
I enjoy it very much as well.
I know,
Yeah.
but isn't that a blessing, though?
It's a blessing.
I mean, again, there's lots of cliches out there, but you don't work a day in your life. You love what you're doing. So,
That's right. It's got to be fun.
yeah. Well, it sounds like the trajectory has been significant since 97 to date. Do you foresee a lot of good things here in the next 5-10?
Absolutely. I feel like we've got a lot of traction. We have stability. We've had such fantastic mentors that we've been able to lay a really secure infrastructure for growth.
Well, it sounds like the Spokane community, even back in 97, but maybe even more so now, is providing a lot of those opportunities.
They really are. Yeah. And we are very committed to staying here.
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
Not everybody says that, and I think you hit on such a critical, important feature that our local community is spending so much on education, and I think you're confirming in a perfect place to confirm the schools are providing what the business community is asking for.
Absolutely. It's wonderful talent, just bright, optimistic students, and I feel pretty committed to trying to continue to give them opportunities to stay here in Spokane and further grow and contribute to our community.
Very encouraging. Darby, thank you. Come back and chat with us again, because we know there's going to be another product, more and more.
Absolutely. Always something to
solutions.
talk about. Always something, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.